Currently on screen is the winner for the last video's Steam code raffle. Make sure you have contact information under your profile so that I can reach out to you and you can claim the Steam code of your choice. You can look in the description below to find a complete list of games for your selection. To find out how you can win a game of your choice, just stick around to the end of the video. Thank you for your time, and now on to the main feature. Hi everyone, Guillotine here. I don't tend to engage with the hot, controversial topic, but every so often I'll decide to weigh in. On that note, I've been loosely following the remake of The Last of Us Part 1. I've seen the argument from the developers saying that they rebuilt the code from the ground up to try and justify a $70 price point. I've also seen counter-arguments dismantling that. However, I won't really be wading any further into that debate. It's ultimately irrelevant to me because I have less than zero intention of buying a copy. I've already played The Last of Us Part 1 on PS3, I acquired a PS4 version, for dirt cheap I might add, and I've already experienced the story. They can tweak the mechanics and code all they want, but The Last of Us is a narrative-driven single-player game, and I have little more to gain by playing it. On that note, I believe that the point of remaking and remastering games is to make it available for people who are otherwise unable to experience it before. And guess what? The Last of Us Part 1 is already on PS4, and the PS5 is almost entirely universally backwards compatible. You can get a copy of Part 1 for less than $10 at the time of writing. In my opinion, it wasn't needed. Which leads to today's topic. 10 games or franchises more deserving of remakes or remasters than The Last of Us Part 1. A few ground rules. I won't do any jokes where I say literally anything else. While it's true that you could remaster things like Barbie Horse Adventure, The Bible Game, or Berenstain Bears Camping Adventure, and have a fair debate saying that they were more deserving of remasterings, I want to focus on games that have a reason to be remade other than just because. Secondly, I will be trying to avoid titles that can be purchased and easily played using modern means other than piracy. I don't count streaming services like PS Now or the Nintendo Premium subscription. You don't own those, you're only able to access them on the terms of the various console makers, and they can take those away should they choose to do so. Thirdly, I'm only mentioning games that I have specifically played. It's likely there's going to be loads of stuff out there that is also deserving, but I have not experienced them. Finally, this is not a comprehensive list. There are thousands of games that deserve a remake or remaster. I'm simply drawing focus on ones that came to my mind in no particular order of importance. With that out of the way, let's begin with... number 10. At one point, I was actually looking around on Steam and various other places to see if I could buy and download various entries from the Driver series. Given the moderate success of Driver San Francisco, you can imagine my surprise when I found that most Driver games aren't available anywhere. You can at least play the aforementioned San Francisco through backwards compatibility on Xbox systems, but otherwise the only one I could immediately find that's available is Driver Parallel Lines on Steam, and that's a shame. I remember playing the original Driver, You Are the Wheelman, on PC, and while the world may have been extremely simple and geometric, the car's handling was fantastic, and it had an enjoyable and mildly camp undercover detective story that ended with you escorting the president while police cars kamikaze your vehicle, which seems kind of counterintuitive to me if I'm a police officer. 99999! Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. Now, it's worth noting that Naughty Dog did not develop this game, which may make sense as to why it hasn't been remastered and released. Naughty Dog's back catalog is pretty good about being playable on one form or another. Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, the Uncharted series, and The Last of Us games are all readily playable on one form or another. However, Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier was developed by High Impact Games and was released on the PSP and PS2. Granted, it's been a while since I last played it, but I remember that it held most of the feel of the franchise, and it wasn't terrible. Actually, now that I think about it, they could also do a nice remake of Daxter. If you ask me, it sounds like a nice 2-for-1 bundle deal just waiting to be made. Number 8. The Sly Cooper franchise. In my opinion, the Sly Cooper series is one of the most stylish and visually appealing stealth platformers ever to be released. The characters were enjoyable, the controls were tight and responsive, and the environments were varied and colorful. The story was straightforward, but just the right motivation to see Cooper and crew through. Now, I don't only want to see these games remade, which already happened on the PS3, and these games may be playable on PlayStation Now, but I said I don't count that at the start of the video, and I don't trust game streaming because we live in America and our internet infrastructure is absolute dog. But getting back to the point, I don't want to see just a remake, but I want a sequel because the last game, Sly 4, ended on a cliffhanger. Sucker Punch says that they've had no interest in returning to Sly, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have Sanzaru Games, the developers of 4, take up the mantle. Number 7. The Ratchet and Clank franchise. We might as well encapsulate the Sony platformer trifecta here. It's worth noting by technicality that the original Ratchet Clank game has been remade when they released the reboot associated with the movie, but that means there are still at least 11 games from the PS2, PS3, and PSP era that haven't been touched. Does Sony want to charge me $70 for a game? Well, if they were to drop all of those games in a single compilation with updated graphics, I would have absolutely zero problem shelling out the money for that kind of deal. I don't see it being that terrible of a prospect to try and port many of these. The PS2 graphics would only need a slight touch-up given their graphical style, and the PS3 games all look fine by modern standards. The gameplay in the franchise has been tight from the beginning, and they wouldn't have to touch that at all. Hop to it, Sony. Oh, no, they're just gonna jack up the price of the PlayStation 5 for most markets. Okay, you too. 6. The Burnout franchise. Here's another one that bewilders me. Burnout Revenge is still available to play via backwards compatibility on Xbox systems, but otherwise beyond the constant re-releasing of Burnout Paradise, EA has done next to nothing with the seminal racing series. One of my earliest gaming impressions was set by Burnout 3 Takedown. Back in the day when GameStops had live demo kiosks that acted as babysitters when my mom was shopping inside of JCPenney's. I'm pretty sure I whistled for the first time after seeing a spectacular crash unfold in front of my eyes. From that point on, I was sold on Burnout. 1 and 2 aren't much to write home about by modern standards, but 3, Revenge, and Dominator are fantastic. In fact, Burnout 3 still sits resolutely in my list of top games of all time. I get EA has difficulty processing most any kind of game re-release that can't have microtransactions shoehorned into it violently, much to the rage of the consumer public, but if they did it with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit from the PS3 and 360, then why not these ones? Spiritual successors have tried to take up the mantle with things like Dangerous Driving, but they've been mixed experiences at best. The flying sparks, sounds of crunching scrap metal, and sensation of zipping through traffic narrowly avoiding death at almost 200 miles per hour is severely neglected by my take. If it's a matter of missing the source code, then fair enough. But it's worth noting that games have been brought back from that brink before. Just look at the original Kingdom Hearts, and that's been re-released ad nauseum. Number 5. Panzer Dragoon Saga. Speaking of games that are missing source codes for remakes, this is one that has been openly confirmed as missing. However, I feel that shouldn't stop them from trying. A game commonly referred to as one of the best on the Sega Saturn, and currently one of the most stupidly overpriced games to try and track down in a modern physical format, give me hope that someone will take up the mantle to reassemble this from scratch. Unless you are the kind of sociopath that's perfectly comfortable handling a game that costs more than 2 months' rent in a low-income neighborhood. Given my professional background and education, I understand why piracy is illegal in certain contexts. But counter to that, this game is one of the very few that I believe justifies piracy for an individual that wants to try out the game, but doesn't have $1,200 to $1,400 to drop on a copy, and that's not even including the archaic hardware that you have to track down in order to make that happen. 4. The early Need for Speed franchise. This one, for me, is slightly less desirous given the fact that we're still getting modern iterations. However, I'm not alone when I say that I would love to have a remake of the original Need for Speed Most Wanted on the 360, or more relevant to my interests, a remake of the original Need for Speed Underground games. Going older than that, it's a little hard to justify because I can see that they don't age as well, but there's an entire generation of racing game fans that would absolutely love to revisit these titles without having to go through the process of hooking up old consoles that may not even work out of the box on modern TVs. And let's not forget, there's a lot of these games. Hop to it, EA. Or are you still fixated on teaching kids how to gamble? 3. Ashuras Wrath. I guess call me a weeb because I like anime. Once in a while, I love something that's just absurdly over the top. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill being 2 prime examples for the illustration of this next game. Ashuras Wrath, in my opinion, is the perfect incarnation of those styles of animes made into a video game. At the time of its release, it received some much-deserved flack by hiding the true ending behind DLC. But even with that hurdle, that game still sticks with me for how batshit insane it gets with the spectacle and over-the-top action. It might be a little bit heavy on the ratio of cutscene to gameplay, but there's a reason that this game is still over $20 to $30 while still not having any means of playability via ports or backwards compatibility. So how about it, Capcom? You've ported every other thing 7 times. Looking at you, Resident Evil 4. Number 2? Cubivore. We're gonna come down now and get into the weird and obscure. For a quick descriptor, imagine graphics even more basic than Minecraft, where you play as a creature who gains powers and evolves by running around and eating other creatures. You also have to collect all the mutations by eating at least one of every creature out there. There's also breeding mechanics and combat to establish who gets to eat the other. Like I said, it's weird, but at the end of the day, the base experience is rather enjoyable. It's also a shame that it's incredibly hard to get a legitimate copy of this game, considering that a complete in-box copy for GameCube goes for about $500. Granted, it's an Atlas title, and that's kind of par for the course for them, but if people are willing to pay $500 for this game, then they'd be willing to pay for a modern port with a few minor game design tweaks to appeal to modern sensibilities. Honorable mentions. The early Persona series. I wanted to include these because, again, they're hard to get and incredibly expensive, but I haven't actually played them. They're on my backlog list. Most anything Konami. I actually would have included a fair amount of their library on this list, but recently Konami announced that they're going to be bringing most of their digital library to modern distribution, so it kind of renders the point moot. Although I shouldn't be surprised that Konami continues to sustain their existence by feeding off nostalgic scraps. Lastly, any extinct or abandoned titles. This is where I plug my obligatory desire to see Rock Band Blitz resurrected somehow. It might be a little silly, but I know many gamers out there have at least one game that is not supported or literally unable to be played. That is why I support game preservation. What? Literally anything at... No. I said I wouldn't do that. Okay, no, real choice. Mario Kart Double Dash. Honestly, I could have included any number of Nintendo titles on here. The Paper Mario RPGs, an F-Zero collection, a compilation of all the previous Fire Emblem games. Nintendo's backlog is considered one of the most sacred in gaming. It's also frustrating to the point of auto-cannibalism that they hold their stuff back to the degree that they do. Getting back on track, Mario Kart Double Dash is one that I've spent the most time with, and is still considered fairly unique in the Mario Kart franchise. The dual racer format was perfectly tailored for single-player, co-op racing, or versus multiplayer, and I would love to see something like that brought back. I would propose someone remaking this just as a non-commercial passion project in the Unreal Engine, but I'm pretty sure just saying those words out loud has now put me on some Nintendo Thought Police watch list. And there you have it, a list of games that I believe are more deserving of a remake than The Last of Us. And as I said at the start, this wasn't a comprehensive list, and I know there are some out there who would love to see something that they experienced on here. What do you think? What are some games that you would love to see remade? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget that doing so may earn you a few extra rewards. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Now that you're here, if you want to be entered for a Steam game of your choice from a list of games in the description below, then all you have to do is leave a comment that wouldn't violate Twitter's terms of service. The winner will be decided 1 week from the publication of this video, and they will be publicly announced with the publication of the next video. So make sure you have some means for me to get in contact with you under your YouTube profile, and make sure you subscribe because I do this with every video. So until next time, this is Guillotine saying thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.